So let's start with this. Just tell us about your journey to becoming the chancellor. And I'll just let folks know that you're the first Hispanic chancellor in Alamo Colleges District history in a majority Hispanic county, Bexar County. And not only that, but, they didn't pluck you from Dallas, Austin, Houston. You spent decades at the Alamo Colleges before rising to chancellor. So with that footnote, I'll let you talk about your journey a little bit.
Sure, I appreciate it. So I have about over 30 years of experience in higher education. As part of that, I have 24 years of time and tenure with the Alamo Colleges, beginning first at Palo Alto College for about 18 years and serving those last 6 as president. And then was fortunate to have interviewed and have been selected by our board of trustees here at the Alamo Colleges District in 2018, February of 2018, as both, you noted earlier, right, the first Latino or Hispanic chancellor and also the first internal candidate from Alamo. So I think what's important about that is it really affirms the talent that we have within the organization, Alamo Colleges, and then also the talent we have in San Antonio in our local community, right? So there, where perhaps previously in other situations there would have been a tendency to go outside of San Antonio to look for top-notch talent, I think what my selection says and hopefully continues is that it's important to look at who we have within the organization, because they're often top notch and can be very successful in the role.
And within the Alamo Colleges, there's SAC, which is really such a pillar in our community. There's not many people that you talk to that don't have some kind of experience with SAC, whether they went to peace officer school there, nursing
Yes.
school. Maybe school wasn't for them, but they did a couple semesters at SAC. And I know it's such a pillar in our community. It's such a pillar in my life as well, because, it might sound like a cliche, but, SAC is kind of the place where I went from a kid to an adult in life. And so I just wonder, before we really get into it, what does a good community college add to a community?
Well, I think, SAC actually is a perfect example. So we provide the opportunity for folks to, perhaps their first chance or maybe their third chance, but to get a credential. That's what's most important. We know in the global economy today that having a credential is the key to success. It's the key to either affirming your hold in the American middle class or going into the American middle class, catapulting. As part of that, what SAC does, and I think they do it really well, and you see this at graduation every May, is the first group of candidates to cross the stage are those getting their high school diploma, because they offer a GED or then the next group are those that get a certificate, right? Either what we call level 1 or level 2. Those are kind of moving all the way to an associate's degree. That's the next group. And then over the last 3 graduations, the last 3 years, there are folks across the stage receiving their bachelor's degree, a bachelor's of science in nursing, a BSN. So if we were to look at just SAC itself, you have the whole continuum from GED or high school diplomas all the way to associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees. And I think that demonstrates and really highlights the power of community colleges within the communities that they serve. And specifically for us, San Antonio College and all of the Alamo colleges within our family and district. And so our intent is over the next few years that you will see the same thing that's modeled at Palo Alto College, St. Philip's, Northeast Lakeview, and Northwest Vista. You're going to see folks cross the stage getting their first credential, which is a high school diploma, going to the certificates and associate's degrees, and then to a bachelor degree. And so imagine the power of that, Matthew, really those folks that are just starting out, right? And those folks that want to continue on to a bachelor's. So, I think, well, one, congratulations on everything you've done for having gone to SAC and then going forward. And then the other is looking at the tens of thousands of graduates from San Antonio College and also from the hundreds of thousands of graduates from all of the Alamo colleges overall. And that is why community colleges are so critical in today's economy, to our community.
And I think one of your main priorities has been, making sure that that power of community colleges can be felt by everybody in our community. I know the Alamo Colleges a few years ago launched Alamo Promise. Tell us about what that program is, and just tell us how it tackles some of San Antonio's historic problems, like economic segregation and like lack of an educated workforce.
And I think one of the distinct value propositions, or one of the wonderful things and assets about Alamo Colleges and my colleagues, is we know the students that we serve, and we are vested in the community. As part of that, what we looked at is we looked at data, for instance, that showed that less than half of high school graduates in particular were going on to college or university. Not only an Alamo College, right, but they weren't going to UTSA or Texas A&M San Antonio or Incarnate Word. They weren't going anywhere. They were going directly into work. But oftentimes those are service sector positions. And long term, that presents a lot of challenges, not only for the individual and their families, but also for the community. So what we did is we looked around, looked at promising practices. There are over 300 different promise programs within the nation. We formed a steering committee. It included Mayor Nuremberg, and at that time, Judge Wolf, along with business leaders, my colleagues from presidents from UTSA, Texas A&M San Antonio, school district superintendents, and foundation representatives. And we said, what are the ways that we can increase college enrollment from less than half to 70% over 5 to 7 years, right, of high school graduates in Bexar County enrolling in college? We did a site visit, looked at what Dallas County was doing, and then we looked at one of the first and most successful Promise programs, the state of Tennessee, and took folks to do that. And that was in 2018. And then in 2019, we launched Alamo Promise, which is our own model, right? It's uniquely, or as folks would say, right, puro San Antonio. So it's uniquely ours. And what we have seen is we launched, as I mentioned, in 19, right? And as we look at the data, we saw pre-COVID double-digit increases year on year from those high schools, the first group of 25 high schools. And then we have seen over time, especially the last 2 years, an increase in enrollment from participating high schools. I would tell you a couple of points of distinction. One is that now Alamo Promise is Bexar County wide. It's not only public high school graduates, it's also private, parochial, and homeschool students. So anybody that has their high school diploma within, that earns it that spring, summer, or fall can then enroll in Alamo College as an Alamo Promise scholar. So I think that's most important. So it's Bexar County wide. The second thing is our target for enrollment for this August was about 5,500 high school graduates, and we have actually enrolled right now about 6,300 high school graduates. So I think that is pretty distinct. That's something that we have celebrated. We see, what is important. And then I would say, Matthew, we meet with our board monthly, and every month we begin our meetings with the Alamo Promise Scholar of the Month. And they tell us, if not for Alamo Promise, I would not be here. If not for Alamo Promise, I would not be completing my first semester, or would not have a trajectory to transfer. And these are students that have a 4.0 GPA. These are students that are applying for internships. These are students who have completed summer programs, right? Competitive nationally with NASA or with the Marine Biology Center. I mean, these are kids in which a challenge was removed, the cost of higher education, right? And who are now on their way to earning a credential, transferring to university, are doing great things. And all they needed was somebody to partner with them to help pay for college.
And that's true. I think once you take away the financial barriers and, you get a student at a place like SAC, I mean, something really magical can happen when they see all the resources that are available to them. I wanted to follow up on that. I know that the data is probably a little uneven because of the pandemic, And you say
Right.
on the enrollment side, things are looking good. But what about on the other side, on the graduation side? I know it's been about 3 or 4 years now, so maybe you would have your first batch of graduates. How is how is that looking? Would you say the program's a success on that side?
I would say it is as well. So one of the things that we do on graduation during the ceremony is we give them stoles, right? So they have like a pearl white stole and says Alamo Promise Scholar. You can look out from the stage and you can see the hundreds of graduates at each of the ceremonies. We graduate about 11 to 12,000 students every year, and I would say about a fifth to a quarter of them. So yeah, like a fifth to a quarter of those students are Alamo Promise Scholars, which I think is the most important thing. And then the other, Matthew, is that it demonstrates the success of the program. So we hear it individually from students, we see it in the numbers, but also we see their smiles, right? And them scanning the Freeman Auditorium or the Alamo Dome looking for their parents. And it's the same thing. It's removing that barrier for success for them.
And when I was a student at SAC, that was around the same time the Obama administration had basically initially started the conversation around free 2-year college. And I remember, I was on a trip. It was with the Student Leadership Institute at Alamo Colleges. We were on a trip to the Capitol for the community college day at the Capitol. And there was kind of a debate going on in the bus whether, that was something that was, a good program. And, I was surprised to hear a lot of the students say that it wasn't. And basically their idea was that we work to go to college and these next generation aren't going to. I wonder if you heard any pushback to this program when you first started it, and how you alleviated those concerns, if you heard any.
I think we've seen there could be similar sentiment that we've seen largely maybe when there's a news article on social media or other folks post the success or the value of Alamo Promise is, we worked our way through college or through graduate school, but through college. And so others should be able to do that. One of the things that we know is that time is the enemy of degree completion, of getting your college degree, right? So the longer it takes for you to do that, and 2/3 of our students are part-time, right? So they're taking 1 or 2 classes every semester. Sometimes they stop, but every time they stop going to school, if they take 1 class instead of 2, we know that they are less likely to graduate. So what we want to do is invest in them. And I think that's what Alamo Promise is. It's an economic investment in that individual, in their success for their family, but it's an economic investment for our community. Because if we look at graduates from any one of the 5 Alamo colleges, on average, they are earning $9,500 more with a certificate or one of our associate's degrees compared to a high school graduate. They're earning about $450,000 more in their lifetime. So let's think of that spend, right? That collective spend from increased earnings within the community. And that's what's most important. They are more likely to, they're going to buy a car. They're going to have more dependable transportation. They're going to save for a home. Instead of renting, they're probably going to save for a down payment and own their own home, which is going to create generational wealth for themselves and for their children, right? They probably are more likely to start a small business. And then those increased earnings, those investments that they're making are going to be reinvested back into the community. And then others are going to benefit from that, right? If I have more income, I'm going to do more things with it. I'm going to buy more things. I'm going to hire people to do things for me, to assist me and my family, which then creates more economic impact. And that's one of the things that we did, Matthew, early on when we, as part of the steering committee, we were looking at different models, but we also created we had an economic impact study done. And so it showed that with Alamo Promise it would increase over 10 years GDP within our area by 2%. Just Alamo Promise itself would increase it by 2%. And so I think that's the other part that's really critical. This is an investment in an individual. Collectively, it's an investment in now, 6,300 and soon tens of thousands of individuals. And there's an immediate ROI, not only for them and their families, but for the community.
And as I start to wrap this up, most of the groups I have on this program that, represent some kind of interest, whether it's criminal justice or public health, they were kind of disappointed by what went on at the legislature this session. But from what I read in the paper, community colleges, and particularly the Alamo colleges, did pretty good at the legislature this year in
Right.
terms of unlocking some funds. Could you tell us more about that?
Definitely. I think, one of the wonderful things. So we have been funded up until recently, had the same funding formula for 50 years. And a couple of years ago, both the Texas Community College Association, in talking with the governor's office, lieutenant governor, and the speaker, said we really need to develop a new funding formula. And they had said, well, we want to look at an outcome-based funding formula, right? What outcomes are your students achieving? We'll fund you based on that. And I think that's the most important thing. And we said, in a sense, the 50 community colleges in our association, that's fine, bring it on. We want to be able to be funded based upon how successful our students are. So that's one, right? There's milestones, but the other is they're also funding us on who we serve. Three distinct categories, right? On who we serve. The first is, are these economically disadvantaged students? Are they qualifying for federal financial aid? We'll give you a quarter more for that student. Are they academically disadvantaged? Are they starting at what we call kind of college prep or developmental work, right? Before college level math or college level English. That's the second thing. So they pay us a little more for that student. And then, are you serving adults 25 years plus? And so those three distinct populations are weighted, in which they give us a little bit more money to be able to support those students. And then the other part is being able then to look at how successful our students are. So two prongs. One is, how successful are your students in achieving milestones, like earning their first 15 hours, earning what we call a credential or credential of value in a high wage, high demand field, transferring to university, as well as then the second bucket, which is, who are you serving? Alamo Colleges, it's like a 3/4, $750 million net new, more money from the state of Texas, net new investment over the next 2 years of $750 million. Out of all 50 community colleges, Alamo Colleges ended up number one. We were number one in that. And I think that's what's important. So if we look, one, we're being funded on how successful our students are. Two, they're supporting us on who we serve. And what Alamo Promise demonstrates is, demographics do not determine destiny, that our students have dreams, have passions that they want to pursue. And if we lower barriers like the cost of education, that our students will be successful.
And I'll close with this. If folks, like what they heard about the Alamo Promise program, and they think it might be for them or their student in their life, where can folks go to find out more about Alamo Promise?
Yeah, they can, Matthew, go to alamo.edu/promise, PROMISE, and they can see information there. Students also can go ahead and complete an interest form. We call it a Save Your Seat form, and then we'll get information about that. If they are actually seniors this year, this is the prime time to do it, or if they're recent high school graduates within the last 6 months, we can also look at serving them. Wonderful program, wonderful opportunity. We have over 300 different programs in high wage, high demand fields. We want to propel economic and social mobility for our 70,000 students, but most importantly, for our community and our neighbors.
And with that, that's Dr. Mike Flores, Chancellor of the Alamo Colleges District. Dr. Flores, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Thank you for inviting me. Always great to see a successful alumna.